Salve Maria, I am Brother Jose, and in this show, we're going to look into two aspects of virtues. One, their connection between each other, and two, the balance point of a virtue. Today, we're going to see how one mortal sin can destroy all your virtues, and also how sometimes, to be balanced, you have to go into an extreme. Saint Gregory the Great said, quote, "The virtues, if separated, cannot be perfect in the nature of virtue, for that is no true prudence which is not just and temperate and brave." What Saint Gregory the Great is trying to say here that all the virtues are connected, especially with prudence. For in order to make a virtuous act, prudence has to guide us to that act. But in the supernatural sphere, all the virtues are connected by the virtue of charity. For charity is the virtue which helps us to love God above all things and our neighbor as ourselves. Now, any sin, mortal sin we commit is a sin against God. Therefore, when we commit one mortal sin, we lose all of our supernatural moral virtues. Pretty bad thing, no? The only virtues we do not lose with a mortal sin are the virtues of faith and hope. The second aspect I want to talk to you is the golden rule of virtue. Moral theologians usually describe the golden rule as a virtue being a balance between two vices. For example, if we take gluttony, if we take the moderation is the virtue where one has a proper eating habit, so he won't eat too much, more than what he needs, an excess, or he won't eat too little, he eats less than what he needs for vain reasons. Now, the problem is that moral theologians normally don't follow the golden rule. So first, before we go into that though, let's actually look into St. Thomas Aquinas' definition, or the way he describes the balance of virtue. St. Thomas Aquinas says that for each virtue, each group of virtues, there is a rule. There is a set of rules that governs the balance point of the virtue. So if we take the intellectual virtues, excluding prudence, they have a set rule. For example, let's take a very simple example. If we take the knowledge, it will be fair to us to say that 1 + 1 = 2. Therefore, there's already a set rule and already observations made that says 1 + 1 = 2. If we were to continue this rule, an excess will be to affirm something that will not be true. So, and to continue the example from before, if 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 3 must also equal 2 because it has the 1 plus in the beginning. That obviously we know is wrong. On the other hand, the lack of, or the defect of the virtue of knowledge in this case is to deny a truth. So in this, following the example from before, it is to say that 1 + 1 does not equal 2. There is a defect, so therefore it's not a virtue. Intellectual virtues then follow a rule. Same thing with art, same thing with knowledge, science, and wisdom. The moral virtues, St. Thomas Aquinas says that the rule is reason. What St. Thomas Aquinas is trying to say is that the person and circumstances of a situation can define what is a virtue and what is a vice. For example, let's take the virtue of moderation and gluttony. For one person, virtue could be eating one sandwich, but for another person, one sandwich could be a vice of gluttony by eating too little. What he will need to eat is 3 sandwiches. But for that other person, where eating 3 sandwiches is a virtue, for the other person, eating 3 sandwiches is way too much. See the difference? Of course, now when we study the other virtues, you will have to be able to judge for yourself where is virtue and where is vice. Of course, we're going to give some guidelines to help you with that. With the theological virtues, I find it the interesting set of virtues. It is the set of virtues that, in order to be balanced, we have to go to the extreme. Why is that? See, when the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, there's no limit on how much we can love God, how much we can believe in God, and how much we can hope in God. We have to have faith in God to our very limits. We have to have the hope in God to our very limits. We have to love God to our very limits. Now, this faith we have in God, this hope we have in God, and this love we have in God, even though it's at our very limits, it's still not enough for God. And that's why, in order to be balanced in the theological virtues, we have to go to our extreme. If we are lacking in our faith, hope, and love in God, we have a defect. Yet we'll never make it to the other extreme because God is infinite. He always deserves more. That's why the balance point is to go to the very extreme. Thank you very much for joining us. Please join us next week where we're going to start talking about vices. What is a vice? And after that, we're going to jump into one of my favorite topics, actually, the 7 capital vices. That's going to be very interesting. You do not want to miss that one. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave something in the comments. Thank you very much, and have a good week. Salve Maria.